If only they knew. The hub for young business minds.
Yes, people, it's Ted Lawlor, and welcome back to another episode of the If Only They Knew podcast. Today, we're joined by Yusuf Amanullah, who speaks about imposter syndrome faced as a young entrepreneur, when's the right time to leave your 9 to 5, and spending over a year crafting what will be the best cold brew coffee on the market. So if you're looking to understand what it takes to be great, this is the podcast for you.
Sure. So I'm Yusuf. I am the founder of Impact Coffee, which is a cold brew coffee infused with nootropics to give you the mind, body, and energy to make an impact. And really, it started off because right now I have a day job in finance, and with that comes long hours, and with long hours usually comes a lot of coffee. And I realized that, to be honest, I wasn't enjoying my coffee experience because I would be getting the jitters, I'd be getting stomach aches, and the crashes. Yeah. And I really wanted my coffee to work for me. So I decided to create something that did.
Perfect. And like I said just before this call as well, I do actually want to let everyone know this is next level. I like oat milk lattes all the time, but this was just next level. And the first can, it sort of blew me away by the fact that I was so zoned in. I was sitting there doing work, and before you know it, I swear, like I think it was like 2 or 3 hours went by, like a really big, substantial amount of time went by. And I was like, wow, like I literally zoned in so much because I think I've got ADHD or ADD or something like that. So sometimes I sort of lose focus and I'll be looking at my phone, and then before you know it, I'm like completely distracted for like half hour. So drinking that really put me into the zone. So yeah, thanks for sending those over. I really, really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. It's been something that we've been developing for more than a year now. And actually, even though you've got the can now, this is essentially version 27D. That's what we call it. And, it really was a case of we tried 20 different nootropics. I was my own guinea pig. So I would just put random things in my coffee to see how I would feel. And essentially, we created this nootropic stack, which is 3 nootropics of ashwagandha, ginkgo biloba, and vitamin B12. And each one has its own unique benefits and functions because, combined, they really create what we stand for, which is sort of this health, energy, and focus. And that's what we were aiming for.
Perfect. And we'll definitely get into the actual benefits of the products a bit later on.
Sure.
Because I think, it's a very unique sort of proposition with what's inside the can. But before we get onto that, who were you before all of this? So before you sort of start the company, like you said, you're working at a day job as well, and you started the company. Who were you before all of this? Have you felt like this starting the company has sort of given you an extra boost of confidence or another sort of layer to your personality? How do you think it's changed you, and who were you before you started the company?
Yeah, for sure. So before this, I think one thing was that I'd read a lot about entrepreneurs, reading and studying them. That was really my main thing. And even at university, I did sort of business management as a degree. So one of the courses was on leadership. And I was always into food and drink anyway. I remember before this, I actually, in my final year of university, went to this one talk where there was a panel of social enterprises that were in food and drink. And I fell in love. It was my favorite talk ever. Yeah. And, I've been to so many, but this was it because I just related to it so much. I enjoyed listening to the process. And, people love food, people love, drinking, but there's a difference between that and loving the business behind it because it's much more of a headache. And at that moment, I knew I wanted to go into that. I decided to start off with work in the finance industry anyway, just because, it was kind of the done thing. And it was a massive blessing. And I think actually during the pandemic, that's when all of this started. I would start mixing things around, trying different ingredients, and, kind of my inner scientist came out. So I guess that's who I was before this. And nowadays, I'm a lot more passionate because there's an escape to go to after work, or before work even, because yeah, it's what I use to be creative. It's what I use to feel more serious. It's what I use to feel as though I'm doing something even more meaningful as well,
Yeah.
which is a massive blessing.
How important is that then, to have that security of the day job? Because it's something like I didn't really understand until I left my job. Well, I was made redundant from my job, and I've been sort of I've got a journal called the Manifestation Journal, as well as If Only They Knew. So like I sort of didn't have a choice. I sort of just went into it, made redundant, and then just sort of focused on the business. But after a few months, you do think, oh, I wish I had a day job to sort of give me that extra layer of security and help me sort of jump even further, because I know I can sort of fall back on something. So for you, how important is it to have that security and have that job behind you, as well as focusing on this?
Yeah, I mean, the security is a huge benefit, and it's a huge blessing. And I think a lot of the time, people always look at the grass on the other side and how it's always greener. There would be people in this in my position thinking like, oh, if only I could go full time into my business. Or oh, it looks so much better, so much more glamorous to be an entrepreneur. Or versus, as well, on the flip side, people are like, oh, it looks so much more glamorous to be part of a company and in flash suits and everything. And either way, I think the most important thing is to be grateful for the position that you're in. For sure, the security has helped. And I guess being here actually gave me the inspiration to start this company in the first place. Had I not gone through the trials of being in a full-time job, had I not gone through the long hours, I wouldn't have been in such a dire situation to want to change that. I didn't want to continuously have like 9 cups of coffee, or this massive can of energy drink. I won't say any name in particular, but any random energy drink just on my desk and feel horrible afterwards. So yeah, I mean, security aside, I think it really is about what you make of it.
Yeah, I found that as well. Like when I was at my 9 to 5 job, on the commute in, I had like an hour and a bit journey on the train in, and then obviously the same back. And I felt like during those times, I was more productive probably than I am throughout the whole day sometimes now, because I was so passionate about sort of getting away from that. Like you said, you had that vision of, okay, if don't really feel like this is for me necessarily, I want to sort of change it. And I feel like, yeah, sometimes you need to sort of go into a job. Obviously, it sounds like you've got a really good job, which is good. But like, like some people do sort of have both sides of the coin, don't they? And I guess, sometimes it's good to have that day job to give you sort of the kick that you need and give you that fire, as well as that sort of separation. Because sometimes I find now that where I'm spending all day doing the same thing, sometimes I just get a bit too involved in it and I don't have that separation point. Like now I've been awake since like 6 o'clock this morning, and it's 6 p.m. now, and I'm still going, and we'll keep going until 9. So I guess sometimes it's good to have that separation, isn't it? And just sort of have that focus and vision of what else you could create apart from the day job.
Yeah, for sure. And everything that you do, there's a reason for it. That's how I see it, right? And I still remember I was listening to someone who was mentioning about Prince, the singer, and how he was a janitor, at one point, and he would save up his money in order to fund, studio sessions. Everything that you do, there's a purpose for it, and it's just about recognizing that. And I think sometimes we all get so focused in the rat race, whether it is corporate life or entrepreneurship. We're so focused on just the day-to-day and the dollars and this, that, and the other, that we forget, we forget to take ourselves out of that situation sometimes and into a more bird's eye view, and realize like, actually, what, we should be happy that we even have a situation like this where there's an opportunity to try something, or we have something to fall back on. And that's kind of how I've started looking at things, and it definitely helps, and like you said, that separation between work and this, it keeps, the spice of
Yeah.
life going as well.
Yeah.
Because if you do just have this routine of doing the same thing for the whole day, it does lose its zing by the end, and especially at the end of the week. But if you vary things up, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a business always. I think if you have a creative side, just be creative. I think a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking that they're really busy all day, and so they can't give time to things like that.
Yeah.
And even if it's just like 20 minutes, but it's 20 minutes more of something that's creative, or something that takes you away from the monotony of certain things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. And when do you think is the right time for people to make that jump if they are in a similar situation where they've been spending those out free 1 or 2 hours every day, sort of after work, before work, during their lunch breaks, etc.? When do you think is the right time to make the jump and say, right, okay, I feel like I've got to a certain point here. Let me sort of take a step back from the day job, get a smaller part-time job, or leave the 9 to 5 life completely. When do you think is the right time to sort of go full throttle on the business, on your side business?
Honestly, I'm still trying to find that answer myself. And
Yeah.
I think that there's never really any right time per se.
Mm.
I would say more than anything, if you can cover your life costs, that's when you can think about scaling back, and perhaps doing a part-time thing to just keep a nest egg,
Yeah.
and a cushion in the background. But it really depends on person to person, and I think it depends on so many other situations, like for example, how much are you invested in your career in terms of the corporate life or your 9 to 5. Some people actually, they enjoy their 9 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
and want to keep that up because it is something that's rewarding.
Yeah.
That's something I've considered as well. Maybe I can do a bit of both. Some people think that that's not worth it. It really does depend on person to person, but I think fundamentally, if you do ever want to go full-time into your business, it is about covering your life expenses and just making sure that, I don't know, you're not, stressing other people out to almost cover that for you.
Yeah.
And getting into debt over, living. That's when it gets really dangerous, I think.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think, just my final point on that would be as well, make sure you've actually getting money coming in before you even contemplate leaving, because I know a lot of people that have done that and thought, oh, you know what, I've got a few followers on Instagram, or I've got this, I got that, now's the time. It's like, no, wait until you actually start making sales first.
Oh yeah.
And then contemplate it.
Exactly. I think it was Dan Meredith who said a business that doesn't make money is just ego masturbation. So just make sure that you're not doing that, and actually have a viable business plan and everything ready. And that's why we're still in this pre-launch phase, and so I'm doubling down on it. But at the same time, I'm very wary that the numbers have to add up, and always just looking back at that and thinking, okay, how much revenue do I need? What are my costs? What's the profit? What's the bottom line at the end of the day? And when is that crossover point, based on those numbers.
I think you've got it right though, what you're saying. Like, maybe you can actually do both, and I think that's not a unrealistic thing to actually happen. But before we get more into your advice and more like about the personal side of things, let's actually get into the product, if you don't mind, because you sort of touched on it there. There's so much going on. If people watching this on YouTube or Spotify on the video version, you'll be able to see that they've got so many different things in the can. If you don't mind, talk us through what's in there and the benefits of it, because you mentioned one already, and I've already said I was zoned in, I felt. So yeah, let's talk about that.
Sure. So there are 4 main things that really combine well within the product, that essentially create it. So there's cold brew coffee, there's ashwagandha, ginkgo biloba, and vitamin B12. And so going further into each one, so cold brew coffee is essentially coffee beans that are being brewed in lukewarm or cold water kind of overnight for like 12 to 15 hours.
Yeah.
And in that way, you don't get the same sort of bitterness and acidity as you do with your normal cup of coffee, which is, you have some coffee beans and you pour some hot water over it. And that was one thing that, I found really benefited me, because with a normal cup of coffee, I mean, I have a dodgy stomach anyway. So that I used to really feel that acidity and that, unwellness. So that's where the cold brew element comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Ashwagandha is this herb used in ancient Ayurvedic medicine, and it's known as a herb that helps with just general well-being. And in particular, it's good for focus. It's good for relieving anxiety and stress. And the way that they kind of describe it is good for just regulating your body's state, so that it's in a consistently, healthy and comfortable state. Mm-hmm. Ginkgo biloba is another herb used in Chinese medicine to help with focus and memory. And actually, it's used in care homes as well sometimes for those suffering from degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia, to obviously not completely cure the disease, but to curb the deterioration. And then you've got vitamin B12, which is a much more common ingredient that's known to boost energy and also help with the formation of red blood cells. And then all of that combined with oat milk means that, we've got a nice vegan cold brew latte. So that's really the product as a whole. And what we wanted to create was a product that gave you functional energy, which was long lasting endurance, that was focused, so that you didn't just feel hyper, but you actually felt like, okay, this is going towards something. There's a purpose for me feeling energetic. And that's really where the name of the company comes in, impact. It's about making an impact during the day.
Yeah, and like I said before, I really I can't explain it enough. I was so zoned in for like 2-3 hours. I was working on like podcast stuff, and like the amount of work I got done was just ridiculous. So again, thank you so much.
No, my pleasure.
That's all right. Thank you, man. And before we get into a bit more about the journey and yourself, quick little question here just to throw you off a little bit. If you could have a coffee with any person in the world, sit down, have a chat, have a nice coffee with someone, who would it be? Who do you think you'd like to sort of pick their brains a bit?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Yeah, isn't it? I thought of it earlier, and I was like, that's a good question. I'm going to put that in there.
Yeah. Ooh, I think I'm just looking at my bookshelf, because there are a couple of people over there that I would like to look at. Yeah, actually, I would like to have a coffee with Milton Hershey, who was the founder of Hershey's. And he's also essentially the creator of the town of Hershey, Pennsylvania. So Hershey, Pennsylvania is essentially was created as like a living area for the workers of the Hershey's factory.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, it's an incredible story actually, and he almost seems like a kid that never grew up and always wanted a utopia. And he had a very difficult life, and when he hit big with Hershey's, he always still wanted to give back to people, and he created a school for the underprivileged, and essentially he gave all his shares of Hershey's to the school. So all the dividends and all the profit that the company makes, it goes towards actually the school and the endowment. So I love to pick his brains, and I'd love to know more about his own personal trials and tribulations and why he felt the need to do all these things, because it is a really remarkable story, and I'd recommend anyone to actually read it and get to know about it more.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. Yeah, that's such a unique person, isn't it? Most people would say, oh, Richard Branson or Lord Sugar, or like they sort of go for the obvious ones. But yeah, I really like that one. I'm going to look into more of his story after. But before we go into your advice and stuff like that, you mentioned to me that you've been in am I right in saying you've been in the research and development stage with this product for like over a year? Is that right?
Yeah.
So what sort of made you want to go through that stage for that long? Was it a choice, or was you just sort of not getting it right, or what was your sort of thought process behind taking such a long time, or is that not a long time in the industry? I don't know.
So actually, when it comes to research and development, when people ask, how long should you be in it, it's kind of like how long is a piece of string. It really depends on company to company, product to product. And I know people who have, got their product ready in like 3 months. I know people who've been still in development for 2 years and haven't gotten anything solidified yet. And I think a lot of it had to do with, us wanting to make it as great as possible. And then a lot of it was kind of out of our control, with COVID hitting like literally everything, when it came to supply chains, when it came to just getting hold of ingredients, people getting COVID and then just not being able to actually, develop it in the background as well. And we wanted to make a product that tasted good and also made you feel good. And getting that is often very, very difficult, right? You can always get the flavor sometimes without getting the benefits, and you can always get the benefits like, I don't know, a wheatgrass shot, and it can taste absolute naff, So it's one of those, it was a really fine balance. And we were literally looking at milligrams of each thing and seeing, okay, well, if we added 20 milligrams of this, how would it affect the flavor? How would it affect how you feel? And so it was a lot of just that testing and tinkering. And, things just do take time, especially when, you also are relying on external teams, other businesses to help you out. They just take as long as they kind of need to. And it's about you running around in the background and making sure that people are on top of things, but also being patient enough to realize like, okay, things aren't going to be done exactly as you plan. I was listening to someone who, this YouTuber called Calix, who's actually got his own sneaker brand. And when he was speaking to someone, to his partner initially, his business partner, he gave him like this budget and a time frame, and he said, double that and add some, and that's actually how long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost. It always just ends up being way more than you expect, both in terms of time and money. And then add to that a whole pandemic and all of that, and everything gets thrown out of whack.
I bet. Well, what stage did you say you're in now then? Because obviously I've got the can here, but did you say that's relatively new thing to have it in the can, or what sort of stage are you at now?
So basically at the end of Jan, start of Feb, we did our trial manufacturing run, which is essentially when the factory that you've decided to go with, they do everything from start to finish. That means like mixing the actual ingredients, doing the whole pasteurization process, canning it, getting the label on it, packaging, and then sending it to wherever you want to. And that usually, this is essentially like our third manufacturing trial run, because the first couple, or the first one was really about, trying to find out how does like the oat milk actually react when you go through the pasteurization process. Then the second time was, okay, after the first one and after giving samples to our friends and family, how, what did they think of the flavor? Okay, let's try and reduce the oat milk and let's try and, change things up a little. Then, after that, we consulted some, sort of food agencies about knowing, okay, in terms of labeling requirements, how much of each ingredients do we need to actually say that we have them in the drink? And so we had to tinker with that a little bit as well. And so that's where this final round comes in, because we are, pretty close to completion, and it could well be that we need to do another one. Obviously we planned, like I said, right, we only planned for one time, and it ended up being loads more. And you kind of just have to go, roll with the punches, take the hits, keep going. And then, when you kind of sunk in your investment in terms of time and money, that's like the best way of essentially, burning the bridges and just saying like, what, I kind of have to do it now. And I have to see this through. And then there have been some moments where, you're not motivated by just how brilliant the product is, but you're motivated by fear. And that's fine as well, because you kind of need that sometimes. So yeah, we're pretty far in, I would say. The fact that we can even send samples out is a massive thing. And, we're hoping that essentially by summer of this year, we are in full production. And, we'll be doing a crowdfunding campaign before then, in May, we're targeting for. And yeah, we hope to get enough to actually do the first production run, essentially.
Definitely. Well, I'll definitely be helping out if I can, if I get the
Thank you.
opportunity to. Yeah, definitely. Just a final few things. Like you say, who's sort of in the team, and did you pull everyone together, or how did that dynamic work? Because I know for 5 years I worked by myself, and I wish I sort of had the confidence and sort of hindsight to get other members and pull other people into this sort of team. So yeah, how does that dynamic work for you?
Yeah, so we is a very big word, actually. When I first started this whole thing, I kind of sat there and I thought, okay, I'm this Muppet who's just mixing stuff in with my coffee, right? Like, I'm not creating a perfect recipe. I'm not creating like a commercially viable recipe. I mean, hell, I was mixing like fish oil with my coffee at one point. Like, I don't recommend it. It tastes absolutely horrible. But I was doing just anything and everything. And at that point, I literally sat down and I said, okay, what don't I know? Because if I don't know it, then I might as well just accept it and then find someone who does and who can help me in that department.
Yeah.
And on top of the fact that at the end of the day, I have to fulfill my full-time job. It is my requirement. It is my job. How much time can I actually put in every day to work on this as a side hustle, and do everything that I set out to during the day, and whether I can do it or whether other people can help pull things together. So we started off by looking at food and beverage development agencies to help us actually come up with a commercially viable recipe. Because it's very different, again, from mixing it in the kitchen and then actually going into production, and then in terms of costs, in terms of the actual pasteurization process, heating things up and then cooling them down always affects flavors and consistency. So that was like the first port of call. And I remember I kind of had meetings with, I think it was 4 or 5. I reached out to like 10, 12 different agencies, had calls with 4 or 5 of them, and then settled on one. Then I looked into, okay, well, I need to start creating content. How am I going to do that? I can't, do that feasibly on my own all the time. So I engaged with a social media agency that, focuses more on Gen Z. And that's kind of our target market anyway. So shout out to the Z Link, if anyone's interested as well. And then I thought, okay, in terms of designing the actual cans themselves and the logo and everything, I had an idea, and I needed someone to really facilitate that and give me ideas from their side as well. So again, I looked at people's portfolios on Pinterest. I looked at Adobe themselves have their own sort of Pinterest-like community where you can have a look at people's portfolios. And so I just reached out to loads of people there to see who was within my price range, essentially my budget. And even now we've got these people who help us out with the actual labeling themselves. Obviously this is something that you're putting into your body, right? It has to have the right labeling, and there have been some incidents in the past. I think Pret a Manger had an issue back in the day, and actually a new law came in because of that. And that's why nowadays when you actually go into restaurants and everything, they ask you actively, do you have any allergies? It's because of that one incident. So you need to make sure that you're on top of it. And then it was when I engaged with these guys with this labeling agency that I thought, oh my god, I have absolutely no clue about any of this stuff. And thank goodness I have someone who can hold me accountable to that. So it was about piecing all these different elements together and accepting essentially that, what I will be doing is essentially being like a manager of all these people, because I have an idea, it's great. Now I need to find people to help me execute it. And rather than having an employee who, I don't know whether they'll be able to do everything that I say and how many employees I'll need. Let me leverage people's experiences as businesses. And, that way they can help me out as much, and I might have to pay for, their overheads essentially a little bit more, but so what, if I'm creating something that I hope to scale massively, a short pain now hopefully will lead to, long-term dividends.
That's it. And like I said before, you've got an amazing product there. So all that effort and all that strategies is actually paying off, it seems. So well done on that. Do you have any doubt though? Do you have any doubt in yourself? Because because some of the young entrepreneurs I've had on, like, even though everything looks good and also is good behind the scenes, like they've actually got everything going on, but deep down in themselves, sometimes they just have that, like, I guess people call it imposter syndrome and stuff like that. Do you have anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, imposter syndrome is kind of like my middle name almost. Yeah, it's difficult to, sometimes find that confidence in yourself. And, obviously I have to accept, like, I'm 23 years old. I have a day job. Like, I'm working and I have imposter syndrome there as well, by the way. Like half the time I'm always worried about, what people think of me. And even in this, I'm always worried, like, what if it doesn't work out? What if this happens, that happens? And sometimes you kind of have to find confidence in something else in those moments, be it your product, be it, a spiritual thing. For me, God is an important part of my life, and so I kind of have to leave it to him. And so in those moments I kind of just, think that way. And so it doesn't necessarily solve it. And I don't think you can ever solve imposter syndrome. It's about channeling it in different ways.
That's it. I love that. I love that you mentioned sort of the spiritual side of things as well, because that's what I'm about. I love that side of things as well. Last few things, let's sort of, I call it a quick fire round, but it never ends up quick fire. So it's just it's just a list of questions basically. Do you have a morning routine that fires you up? Because I asked that, it may sound random, but I asked that because I've found that breath work, and there's a Tony Robbins priming video, as well as cold showers, really have had a massive impact on my mental and physical health. So yeah, do you have a morning routine that fires you up?
Yeah, so when I get up, I try and get up in time to pray. So I first do that. Then I tend to use the Calm app and do their kind of daily meditation, which is 10 minutes. Then I just kind of do a brain dump of anything that's in my head, all the doubts that are coming into my head for the day or from the day prior. I like to just write it down and kind of, I don't know, be a parent to myself in some ways, by just saying, you kind of have to fight these things, just do it regardless. And then I also like to write down 5 things that I'm most grateful for. And I like to look at things that are really not the big picture items, but the really small things. Like, if I had a really good sandwich the day before, that's something to be grateful for, because not everyone gets that.
That's it.
And on top of that, then I have my shower. It's usually, I timed it the other day, it's like 12 minutes. Wow. And then I'm good to go. I tend to work on more creative stuff and things that need, more brain power in the mornings, because in the evenings it's much more difficult after a full day to keep going. And that's really my main routine, and it's about an hour all in all, but when I stick with that, it really sets my whole day up.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. And as you were speaking there, you probably saw me fiddling around. I got the journal. That is exactly what I do. So you can't really see it's back to front, I think, but like I write down everything I'm grateful for, affirmations, and my objectives. And it's like, I know it's my own product, but I was doing this before I actually had the product as well. So that stuff like that really, really does help me as well. But the next question, favorite brand out there, whether it be personal brand or That's it. That's it. Exactly what I just said, man. You got to live by your product, haven't you?
Yeah, it's impact coffee all the way.
That's it.
But even before that, I'm trying to think of a particular brand that I really stood by. Oh, that's a good question as well, because you've got like the big brands nowadays, and sometimes you don't want to go for those as a common thing.
Yeah.
But interesting.
You can't say
Interesting question.
Hershey's.
No, I'm not gonna say Hershey's. I'm not. I definitely won't. In terms of brand, Nespresso, which is
Nespresso.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Why is
I
that?
love I love their shops. They
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
kind of clean freak, neat freak's dream.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant experience if you ever go in, and even if you don't buy anything, just the way that they package things, the way that they present things in their shops, in their stores. Yeah, it's brilliant. I've never owned an espresso machine, but whenever
Yeah.
I pass by a shop, I just walk in and I roam around.
Wow, that
So,
is
yeah,
powerful, isn't it, for a brand to have that impact? Well, next question. What is one thing you're proud of?
one thing I am proud of. Oh gosh, that's a very existential question. Gosh, I think I'm proud. Sometimes it's the small things, right? Sometimes you're proud of just getting up out of bed
Yeah.
in the morning. I think you know you need to sometimes recognize that that's something that you need to be proud of. That life is tough and you kind of just have to get up and get on with it. And even if it feels like you're going into autopilot, the fact that you got up, you can be proud of that. And I think another thing is probably that I'm trying to learn more about my faith. Whether I ever get to that perfect stage. I mean, no one's perfect, no one ever can be. But yeah, I like to think that those things I'm proud of.
I love that. And what would if you had like one short bit of advice for the young people listening, whether they're involved in business or just in terms of mindset or sort of anything other than business or even if it is business, what would your one piece of advice be for those young people?
Ooh, I think the one most important piece of advice that I'm trying to wrap my head around as well every day is that you were built to be imperfect. And so allow that, because with the advent of social media, I'm not the first one to say it, I won't be the last. Everyone's life is perfect on social media, and you really don't know what people are going through. And we weren't built to ever be perfect. And everything that we do, there's some sort of imperfection, and even the biggest companies, the biggest brands, everyone, always there's something or another that's imperfect in them. So kind of live with that, embrace it, and be humble enough to realize that as well. And don't go searching for perfection, because you'll never find it, and it's a very tiring and taxing exercise.
Yeah, it is. I completely get that as well. That's something I've been thinking about a lot. Obviously, this show is called If Only They Knew. So what is one thing you wish you knew at an earlier stage, whether that be your life or your business career?
If only I knew. If only I knew that everything, like I said, everything takes twice as long and twice as much money to make it the way that you actually want to.
Yeah.
And I think I'll add another thing, that the only way to actually progress is by just starting. It's that old proverb. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Throw yourself in, try it out. You don't have to, invest millions into everything. I think everyone is so obsessed with getting, seed round funding of X million, this many million, being a unicorn and everything like that. That doesn't happen to everyone, and that definitely doesn't happen first time round. Just start somewhere, learn, speak with people, send that email that you always wanted to, send that DM that you don't think will be read, but somehow will be, potentially. And even if it doesn't, so what? You tried.
Man, I love that. That's the exact same advice I always give as well when I'm asked. Just get started and get out there, be confident. You've fired me up. I really appreciate your time. What is next for you? And tied up in that, what do you want your legacy to be?
So what's next for me is basically getting Impact Coffee to market. Like I said, we're hoping to do our crowdfunding campaign in May. And shortly after that, get it into the hands of people and be able to, start selling it online primarily, and then also in a few stockists initially. So that's what I'm really focusing on for the next year, essentially. And in terms of legacy, I guess, I want to be known as someone who, was a good person for the most part. A person, a human, imperfect, but tried to do good for the most part. And that's really the main thing.
Love that. And like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I've really enjoyed listening to you. We got really deep at the end, but I love that sort of stuff. I thrive off of that. So I now feel more motivated than I did this morning. So thank you so much. And the floor's not yours as well. So if you've got anything you want to, like a final message to the audience, or you just want to tell them where to find out more about yourself and the brand, yeah, please let them know now.
Sure. So you can check us out on Instagram at Impact Coffee Drink. You can check out our website, impact-coffee.com, and sign up for a newsletter. And be sure to follow us, because we're doing weekly giveaways now that we have samples. So be sure to check us out. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter. You won't be disappointed, because it's literally free samples of coffee. So who doesn't love that?
That's it. Perfect. Well, like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and best of luck. Thanks for coming on.
No, thank you so much.